Hello and welcome to another episode of the board. There's a little bit preemptive there. This is episode 26 of the board. We've been doing this for quite a while, so thanks if you're watching for keeping up with us. I'm Gavin Coughlin, Agile Coach here at Boost New Media. I'm joined by
Paul Llewellyn, Agile Coach at Boost.
And I'm Kirsten Donaldson.
And today we're going to be covering a few things. We're going to be talking about, this is a topic that comes up quite a lot. We hold a lunch with Scrum practitioners here in Wellington and we talk about issues that we're having in our day-to-day work. And one thing that comes up quite a lot is how do you change the negative perception that some people have of Scrum or some companies have of Scrum, and it always creates quite an interesting conversation. And by the way, if you're watching, if you have any questions or any points, please let us know through the chat functionality in live stream.
So it's interesting, this negative perceptions of Scrum. I think one of the really good questions is it really about Scrum or Agile, or is it about their experiences of people using Agile practices in Scrum that maybe aren't reflective of the actual process?
Well, I think my experience seems to be that they have some false ideas about what Agile is, not only Scrum. Companies are afraid. Well, so some people think, I've heard one person describe it as a bunch of hacky sack players.
Skateboarding hacky
sack players.
That was just,
I find that strange because I can't do either of those things.
No, you're very bad at hacky sack, that's all right.
No, but it's just a kind of a label that people slap on an unknown, I think, those sorts of comments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that kind of comment came from the fact that Scrum has become very popular amongst the startup community, and those kind of, there are people doing work that they're often working very long hours, and they also have a bit of fun at the office to take a break. But they don't leave their office, so they've got to bring all their toys as well as their work to their office so that they can.
And of course, those sorts of companies tend to be innovative companies, though, as well.
That's right.
So it's no surprise they're using something that's least familiar to more traditional companies.
And I think a lot of people also feel that there's a lack of documentation, whether it's requirements or just whatever documentation, say a Prince2 methodology might require from people. So they think that it's a bit fly by night and there's no planning and it's a bit devil may care, stuff like that. So what other negative reviews do you think people have?
My favourite is too prescriptive.
Too prescriptive.
I've
heard that, yeah.
And it's just, it's a framework. It's a very loose framework around, and Scrum does, it asks that you do a few meetings ahead of setting up an iteration and then reviewing how the iteration went and improving your process. And it's not prescriptive, I don't think, not compared to some of the other methods or frameworks that are out there,
I don't think in this case that prescriptive is a bad thing, because the regular meetings that we have save so many other meetings that have no outcome, so have no value. So I think it's just prescriptive enough, in my opinion.
So it's about changing the language, I think, and making people understand about cadence and the fact that if you do things on a regular basis, then you significantly reduce the time that you spend in ad hoc meetings, for example, from having a daily stand-up, and all that kind of.
Yeah, and wasting time on meetings that don't have a clear goal.
Yeah, that's right.
The meetings do have a clear goal, and obviously if you're doing them for every iteration, you know exactly why you're there every single time.
Yeah.
I did meet a friend of mine recently in a supermarket, in a bottle shop.
Truth comes out.
But he said, what are you doing these days? I said, I'm an Agile coach with Boost. And he said, you're not one of those guys, are you? We have an Agile coach, and he's always making us high five, and he gets the team cuddles together. He gets the team to do group cuddles.
I'm going to say I'm not comfortable with that straight out.
Yeah, and that's a bit unfair to blame Agile or Scrum on that. That's just
I think that might be a personality thing.
Yeah, that's a person's approach.
I've heard the retrospective called a number of things, though. The retrospective meeting. One of them was a barracks inspection. That's obviously. And I think they soon realised, but that was the impression that they had, that they'd never done a retrospective before, and we were about to go into our first retrospective, or should I call it barracks inspection, he said. And so it was just the fact that I think that developer in particular, and some developers do really suffer from this, is the transparency. Suddenly it's like a spotlight being shone on what they actually do.
It does make people uncomfortable and somewhat defensive, I think.
And the point is, it's not that we're not trying to shine a spotlight and say, what are you actually doing in the stand-up? What were you doing yesterday? What were you going to be doing? today it's a coordination meeting amongst a team of people who are working on a piece of complex software.
That's the stand-up now rather than the retro.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I'm sorry, it's the transparency aspect, and transparency is what he couldn't contend with. I think that's why he called it a barracks inspection, because he felt like he was the spotlight was on, and the transparency for him was too glaring. In the Scrum environment.
Of course, with retrospectives, other people regard it as a session that's touchy-feely. I've heard that sort of been
the warm fluffies.
The warm, we heard Paul and I heard it referred to as the warm
fluffies.
They said it's time for retro, and one of the people present said, "Oh, the warm fluffies." And
wow, because I don't, I'm not a person that's particularly given to warm, fluffy things. I don't regard the retrospective as that at all. I think it's a great chance to be sensible about appreciating people, which I guess is what that person might be referring to.
The appreciation,
but also, a great chance to examine things that haven't gone so well.
And,
yes,
and I don't
balance,
Yeah, I think it is a hard one. People feel like it's any signs of appreciation. And it's like it's a touchy-feely moment.
Uncomfortable.
Imagine though, the people that say that about warm fluffies. If someone gave them an appreciation, I would imagine it makes them feel quite good.
Yeah, I think so. I couldn't work out whether the statement about the warm fluffies was made because this person was personally uncomfortable, but really kind of like it was trying to make it easier for the room to accept it. By making it a joke. It may have been doing that rather than because I don't know, but I don't see a problem. We had this. I don't know if this is a good point to segue into that conflict.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I was
resolution
just thinking the same thing. Actually.
Workshop, but the fact that we had a conflict. What do you call it? Conflict workshop.
Working with conflict.
Working with conflict.
It wasn't really about resolving conflict. The way that we framed this, which was from Lisa Atkins' talk at Agile 2013. Was that conflict is a change urge, so we should be really looking to examine it and work through it rather than regard it as something to avoid.
Yeah.
But I think you were going to talk about, we started the session with
positives and negatives.
I was thinking of the love languages thing actually, which is sort of
it's kind of. But positive and negatives. I was just thinking about that deposits and withdrawals thing. The fact that any relationship that we have as humans often requires a degree of positive. A larger degree of positive aspects than negative aspects. Otherwise, you end that relationship quite quickly. If you've got more negative aspects than positive aspects to a relationship, then you usually end that relationship.
So we're talking about the 5-to-1 ratio.
That's right. So
5 positive inputs to every 1 negative.
Apparently makes a very high performing relationship. 5 positive to it's 5 positive to 1 negative. 2 positive to 1 negative makes a medium performing relationship. Anything less than 1 to 1 makes a dysfunctional relationship.
The other activity that we did right at the start, I think, helps for understanding how people like to, or how they hear praise. So do you want to explain that actually, because you ran that part of it?
Yeah, it was an interesting one to pitch to a group of blokes because it's called love languages, and we talked about the 5 love languages and how people like to be I suppose treated and how they show appreciation to people as well, and there's 5 general ways that people do that, and we asked people to pick what they felt was their biggest one, because everybody likes each of the 5 things, which are the giving of gifts, if you like receiving gifts, or giving gifts to show your appreciation. There's touch was another one, and there's terms of affirmation, so saying I love you, or you did a great job.
Depending on where you are.
Yeah, depending on where you are, exactly. I love you might be inappropriate in the workplace at times, a little creepy. And
I was glad no one chose touch, actually. I didn't know that we had to have a conversation about appropriate touch.
Yeah, and there's quality time was another one, so if you appreciate somebody, you'll make sure that you spend some one-on-one time with that person and have that quality time. And how many did I say? Did I say 5?
So it was words of affirmation, gift giving, touch, quality time.
Acts of service, which actually, so that's
which is doing things for people. So, for example, in the workplace, making someone a cup of coffee, or
at home, making a meal, cooking a meal for somebody. So we got everybody to have a think about those things, and then stick their name up in whichever love language they think is most important to them. And
so
it's really useful to know about people, because if someone, for example, gave me quality time when I'm a person who appreciates acts of service and gives acts of service, I probably wouldn't notice that they were trying to do something nice for me.
No, yes.
Because I don't recognise it as something that's a sort of a positive affirmation.
No.
And I think that's why it's important.
I'm the same with gift giving. If someone gave me a gift that spent no time with me, then that gift would be quite sort of shallow.
To be like puzzled. To be
like, why did you give me a gift?
Yeah,
exactly.
So that's where it's really handy, because you know, if your words of praise aren't getting through, then it's no use really, is it?
No.
So we know that most of the people here were interested in quality time.
Quality time, yeah.
I can't remember what the other one was.
It's quite a good exercise, and nobody was really sure about what we were doing when they were coming into it. They thought it was an odd topic, managing conflict. But I think most people got something out of it and felt it was quite interesting. And it's always nice to get the team together and do little exercises which are interesting and a little bit different than usual. On a Friday afternoon, so it's good to get everybody together.
It was a rather long segue, but my point around this was that the guy who raised it as a barracks inspection in the retrospective it's a request for change, or a request for the way that we frame what we're doing, so that he understands it isn't a barracks inspection. So it's great that he vocalised it. I'd much rather have people vocalise their objections to things, because objections are great, because then you can reframe it into a way that they understand perhaps, and it's not a barracks inspection. This is about improving your process. It's about making your work easier, and this is your process. You choose how you're going to change it.
And those are some of the negative perceptions of Scrum. So I suppose the question we posed.
We were talking about that.
Well, the question we posed at the start is how do we change these negative perceptions, or how do we react to these? I've got my own opinions about them. I'm sure you guys have your own opinions about that too.
I think the proof is in the working software personally.
Proof is in the pudding.
Maybe that seems quite simplistic, but it's certainly, when I was new to Scrum a couple of years ago, coming here, seeing working software every week, and seeing people talking to each other, I think was really proof that this is a good thing. And happy clients, actually.
I think
made a difference to me personally.
I think that's true. I think going into a company and doing training, good training with people is always an advantage, and it gets everybody on the same page and gets everybody to fully understand it, and not only know what you have to do, but also fully understand why you're doing it and why these things are in place.
And it dispels those misconceptions they might have about how it works as well.
Of course, the other advantage we've got as a team of coaches is that we have all worked in the software industry for a number of years. And personally, being from a developer background, or being a developer for 20 years, for me, Scrum is a game changer, because it suddenly made me very happy and motivated at my work.
No, I'm exactly the same. As a project manager working in a more traditional way previously, this was quite a revelation. And stress levels dropped by a large degree.
I know people. There are people out there that would say, it's work. It doesn't mean you have to. You shouldn't be happy at work. But I disagree with that, because obviously people that are happy are much more motivated if they're happy at what they do.
We're not coal miners.
It pays off in so many ways, doesn't it?
And
for the organisation as well as for
we did have somebody come in from a government organisation to look at what we were doing, and their comment was, how did we employ such highly motivated individuals? And the point, he obviously missed the point completely, that that people come to us like that, which they do now actually, because they've heard about how we work and they want to work in that way. But originally, it was a change. It was a change. It's the way we work that makes people highly motivated, not the highly motivated people that come to us. Although, like you say, now people want to come and work with us because they've heard about what we do.
I also think another way to help change people's negative perceptions is, if people are using Scrum and have some bad perceptions, if something's wrong there, and if you go in there as a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach, just try to make sure that the good things are happening and that people's morale is up, and you aren't just doing what the A to Z's of Scrum, but you are making sure that people are getting value from each and every meeting. But
giving them the opportunity to make changes if there are things that are not working for them. And running proper retrospectives.
That's right. And everybody in the software industry is usually they're highly educated people, across the board. There's no point in telling them what to do. It's in giving them ownership of what they do, and allowing them to make their own decisions as much as possible. Where local decision making is applicable, then allow them to make their decisions. They're closest to solving the problems. So it's about fostering that. This is your work. This is your project. This is your process. This is your meeting. This is your Scrum board.
Absolutely.
I
think that actually brings us on to our next couple of topics, which
That's
is
right.
What makes a Scrum team a Scrum team? What are the characteristics?
Yeah.
And also what makes a great Scrum Master. But firstly, the team. It's not just about doing the activities that Scrum prescribes. It's about actually embracing the Agile values and becoming self-managing.
Yeah.
And then having a coach or Scrum Master who facilitates rather than manages them.
Yeah.
What are some of the other aspects you guys have seen of what you consider to be a Scrum team?
I think a fully functioning Scrum team kind of holds themselves accountable for their work and for the project and the product, and I think that's something that can't happen straight away. I think that's something that a team have to grow into, and Scrum certainly helps with that. And it's one of the points in the great Scrum Master thing as well, is helping a team to become accountable for itself. And obviously I also think that a truly self-organizing team takes time to bubble up, really, because you see a lot of teams when they start, and even around the stand-ups, they're just a little bit hesitant, and they're still used to progress reports and giving a number of hours estimated for each piece of work that they're doing. So it takes a bit of time for them to understand that it's a different mindset, a different world that they're working in now, and eventually you see people become a really highly functioning team. We have one team that's been working together for a Scrum team that's been working together for 3 or 4 years now, and they've got it. You're the Scrum Master on that project now, and I'd say a lot of the time you barely need to be there.
I've
I know that sounds bad, but it's a good thing. Yeah.
It's a conscious movement away from the team as well. Like one example in that great Scrum Master post was a good Scrum Master is a bridge between the team and the product owner. A great Scrum Master removes the bridge between the need for the bridge. And so I've been working on that quite consciously for almost the entire time I've worked with this team, is that if I'm not available for that connection, if they send me an email saying we need some more work, for example, or we don't understand this story, and there's going to be a delay at some point in me being able to respond to that, and it's not, I can't give an answer anyway. I'm just making a connection. So why not just have that direct connection? You don't need me to be a go-between at all. And it's about it's about fostering that relationship between the product owner and the team, and not having an in-between or a go-between. And
having said that, I still believe there needs to be some amount of account management.
Yeah, sure.
So someone who does have that sort of higher level if need be, not higher in status, but just where it goes to a point so that the team doesn't have to deal with it. Because development team, there's some things they don't want to get involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the team will come to me with a question or an impediment, and then I'll go away and deal with that. I won't make them, unless it's something I can get them to resolve themselves, I'll resolve it for them.
The difference, I guess, is if it's directly related to the work, then it's appropriate for them to deal with it. But if it's a larger sort of account management issue,
That's
they
right.
need to still be there.
And that post that you're talking about, it's a Jeff Watt post, and it's from a couple of years ago now, but I only came across it a couple of days ago. It's a really good one. It's a list. So it's on the inspectandadapt.com website, I think. And it's what makes a great Scrum Master, and it's a question that I get asked a lot and that I've talked about quite a lot as well. And there's, I think, 3 levels of Scrum Master. There's the Scrum Master who just comes in and just facilitates the meetings and just runs retros, and that's it. And then there's this good Scrum Master which is there with the team and helping the team and serving the team. And then there's a great Scrum Master, which is what this list addresses. Probably won't go through everything on this list.
Just pick out the best bits.
Yeah, pick out the best bits. So a good Scrum Master protects the team from distraction. A great Scrum Master finds the root cause of those distractions and eliminates them, which I absolutely agree with. So if you can stop the distractions from happening in the first place, it's a fantastic place for the team to be, really. And
I'm now teaching the team how to do root cause analysis so they can find out what the cause of their own distractions is for themselves without needing me, i.e. around critical problems that occur in production. They perform a root cause analysis to work out what caused that problem, so they don't have to deal with it again.
And a good Scrum Master, this is an interesting one, a good Scrum Master listens to what is said in the daily Scrum. A great Scrum Master listens to what is not said in the daily Scrum, which I think is pretty interesting, because if you do, this might mean different things to different people, but for me, if you're around a stand-up and everybody just talks about what they did yesterday, what they did today, and you know, so if they say, yesterday I did this, today I'm going to be doing this, no blocks, and it stands back, they've said everything that you kind of ask them to say, but it's not really very productive. They're not really coordinating their work. No. They're not discussing that stuff with other team members.
There's no interaction. There's no, like you say, and there's just a status update. Yeah, essentially.
And recently we did go to a stand-up where it was very much like that. Everybody stood up and it was just kind of went around the circles. And at the end of that, I'm not sure what people walked away from the stand-up. You should,
I don't think there was any benefit gained or any, you know, it wasn't a feeling of a team trying to coordinate and meet an objective or a goal. They were just working as individuals.
That would be, you know, a good idea to bring in those new questions. You know, how are you going to contribute to the sprint goal? I mean, to me, those new questions are a bit lengthy for our established teams, but perhaps for a newer team, that would be really good to actually voice those.
Just just reminding them, each time they stand up, you know, what the stand-up's about and why they're doing it.
So sort of taking it back to basics of actually standing there as a Scrum Master and asking what the questions, new questions now, but
And also, this one makes a lot of sense as well. A good Scrum Master facilitates the sprint review, so the team get to demo to the product owner. A great Scrum Master ensures the product owner is already aware, so the demo can be held for other stakeholders.
So that's really involving the product owner throughout the sprint.
That's right.
Acceptance on stories and sitting with developers.
And in which case, and it's a higher level review in that case. It's a case of what we achieved the sprint, and let's talk about what we're going to, it's about engaging the stakeholders to feed back into the product and get enhancements or new items on the product backlog. But also it's about it's just a high level review of the product itself rather than in the current state of it.
And I quite like this one as well. A good Scrum Master will be indispensable to the team. A great Scrum Master will make themselves dispensable and wanted. Which I think is quite true. So I mean, a lot of the time when you're working with the team as a Scrum Master, you're absolutely indispensable, and they depend on you for a lot of different things. But hopefully over time that will change, and they could function without you, but they still want your presence there because you're still supporting them and helping them.
It's that whole thing about teaching a man to fish, and giving the team the tools they need to do their work.
This one would be a slightly trickier one, I feel. It's a good Scrum Master helps the Scrum team survive in an organization's culture. A great Scrum Master helps change the culture so Scrum teams can thrive.
That's a lot to put on someone's shoulders, isn't it?
Yeah,
so this is the change agent thing that's referred to so often.
I think actually a group of Agile coaches have a crack at that. I'd hesitate to put that all on one person's shoulders, depending on the size of the organisation.
But essentially it's about, I hesitate to use the word evangelist, but it can have positive connotations as well as negative. But essentially we're proponents of a way of doing things, and the reason we're proponents of that way of doing things is because we used to do things the other way, and now we do it this way and we prefer this way. And of course
for good reasons.
And of course if something better comes along, or we adapt and inspect our process the whole time, it's a constant evolution. The Scrum that we do now is completely different from the Scrum that we did 3 years ago. And so it's just understanding that evolution might take us somewhere completely different in the future, but it's an active management of your process.
Well, if you're not able to change when you're working in an agile way, there's a problem there somewhere already. That's because that's part of the point of it.
Ironic.
Yes, a little bit.
So just thinking, because there was an interesting blog post that Al Shalloway posted on his net objectives, and I think Kirsten, you brought it up, was some of the things that
it was basically on the premise that you may not be doing SAFe. However, if you are an organisation operating at scale, you should be doing X list of items.
Okay. So just to clarify, SAFe is the Scaled Agile framework, and it's implemented by large organisations
multiple teams.
Of thousands of people, usually hundreds to thousands of people operating on product lines essentially for a company, and so Al's point is Al is the head of the CEO of a company called Net Objectives, and they've been agile as long as I can remember. They're one of the key players in the industry, and Al gives a lot back to the community. And his view is, SAFe isn't it's not the answer for everybody. It does depend on the organisation, but the thing is SAFe brings so many good ideas to bear and combines, or more to the point, it combines so many good schools of thought into one thing. You're a fool if you aren't doing some of those things that SAFe
and some of them are
talks
really
about.
Fundamental to agile principles.
That's right.
Like,
such
for example, making all work visible. Scrum boards.
The Toyota production system. That was the Toyota way, as it's called. We call it Kanban. It's the Toyota production system. Those guys have been making their work visible since 1956. And
nice tagline.
Yeah, and it's a really essential part of what we do to understand what's going through the system and why. It's a conversation starter. Oh, I didn't know you were working on that. Oh, great! I'm really interested in pushing that forward. I've got so I'll add some fuel to that fire. Or it's just that I want to do this. This is really important. And then somebody saying, well, we're already doing all this, let's prioritise,
it's really
and so on.
Smoothing out those communication lines.
That's right. And visible workspaces just make it very easy and tangible, very real.
The other one that's interesting on here, was...
I just wanted to say very quickly, but slowly. Visible workspace, for me, people... If they don't have a visible workspace, they think, oh, do we really need it? Do we need a physical workspace? I don't really see the benefits. And people don't understand until they actually have one, until they actually use one, the benefits and the conversations that those things actually bring out.
It's true, but I can't imagine working without one now, having worked with them. I don't think you could go backwards, could you?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and make it visible. I mean, making it visible is about making it public as well, I think, and putting it so that everybody can see it in the organisation.
Transparency again, isn't it?
That's right. It's not hiding it away,
Also, I love when people come into our office and see all the Scrum boards around. It's a really positive thing for people to see.
I mean, because otherwise it just looks like a bunch of people, bunch of computers.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Some of the other things that Al talks about are things that happen naturally with Scrum teams. Scrum teams tend to work on software, and they tend to combine extreme programming practices with Scrum. I think the adoption rate is something like up to 70% of Scrum teams adopt some or all of XP practices.
So we're talking about things like test-driven development,
pair
programming,
continuous integration. Those things are really important to the quality of the product, the software product. Moving at speed depends on having a quality product. So if you want to do things fast, you have to focus on quality. And Al's point being, that extreme programming really, those practices that extreme programming bring to the party really help the team focus on quality. Test-driven development is a bit more than just testing. It's about upfront, but just-in-time design and specification and documentation as well.
And actually we have a good blog post explaining that in more detail.
That's right, we do, yeah.
But the other one that I want to talk about before we finish, Paul, which I want you to talk about, is aligning on cadence and synchronizing regularly. Yeah,
so that's when the cadence is where most Scrum teams, if they're operating as an individual Scrum team, they will obviously work on a cadence where they every 2 weeks they plan their next iteration, and then at the end of that 2 weeks they review and they retrospect. They have a daily stand-up. That's their cadence. They're working to a rhythm, and the rhythm is there to reduce the need for unnecessary meetings and to allow the team to focus on what they're doing, so that they're not, they know when those meetings are happening. There's no additional thought process involved in what they're doing. Synchronization is talking to when we've got multiple teams working on a product. You've got a large product, and you've got multiple teams, or if you've got related products even, and you've got multiple teams. Synchronization helps with the coordination of work between those teams.
Absolutely. I mean, it allows them to stop at the same time and look at what they're doing and make changes at the same time. As I can imagine, if you've got some teams doing that at this point and some doing it at this point, you know, things would become messy and
Yeah.
very difficult.
It allows them to align. Say if you're doing a rolling wave style of planning, or SAFE, it's called the PSI.
Yeah.
They
What's PSI stand for?
Potentially shippable increment. So every 3 months in the rolling wave style as well, every 3 months they realign the teams on the vision of the organisation. So that means someone like the CEO will come down and talk about their vision for the organisation and where the organisation's going, the high level. And you can't get a CEO to come to every sprint planning session, and you can't get a CEO to come to 5 teams that are all running on different cadence, different synchronisations.
That's right.
You know, so if you want that CEO to come and present the vision for the team, you need to align them onto a certain.
It's really important. Can you imagine if you're working, you know, for months at a time, not being reminded of that vision? You know,
Yeah.
Where does that leave you every day when you don't know really what you're trying to achieve?
That's right.
No.
So it's about alignment. Essentially, synchronization is about alignment of the teams, alignment to the organisation, alignment to the product and the vision, and that's why synchronization is so important.
We'll put up a link to Al's blog post because I think it's really useful if people are operating at scale and thinking about the sorts of practices they'd like to adopt.
Yeah.
It's very warm in Wellington today, and it's incredibly warm in here, so I think we might end it there.
Yeah, this is quite stuffy in there. So, but I just want to point out, I'm not sure if we've asked this before, but we're 26 episodes in, we've covered a lot of topics. If there's any topics anybody watching would ever like us to discuss on the board, we'd be very, very open to that indeed. So you can email info@boost.co.nz if you do have any topics you'd like us to bandy about for half an hour.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Paul?
No, I think.
Good?
Yep.
Good.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. See you next time.
You.